Welcome to Red House Design render settings videos. What we have here today is open space, modern open space design living, and we are going to try to create some nice warm day atmosphere to it. So let's start by creating our base render. And we'll make one more copy of the same thing for our effects. Now I'm going to select one of the preset styles from Lumion called Realistic, and we'll need a couple of more. So I'm going to choose from Weather and Climate Real Skies, specifically this cloudy preset. We'll need sun. And I'm going to use volumetric sunlight as well. Now let's start with the real skies first, so we can adjust our heading and the brightness. So I'm going to bring the brightness up. Obviously we need a lot of light for this interior, so I'm going to move the heading somewhere around here. It is barely visible down here, but I want the light coming to be coming from my right. Adjust the overall brightness a little bit up, and we'll leave it at that. Let's adjust the sun, specifically the sun height, bring it up so we have very strong light coming from outside. And the heading, I would like to have some light coming in, as you can see through those windows in here, and especially at the back in here into the living room. I'm gonna go back to volumetric sunlight and disable it for now, so this is not obstructing our picture in here, as you can see. So back to the sun, the brightness, I'm going to bring it up to somewhere around the value of 1, and the height perhaps somewhere around there, so we have some sun streaming in through those windows at the back. Moving on to next effect, sharpening effect. We'll just bring the intensity up only a little bit, just a subtle effect. I'll use exposure or adjust exposure as last, so let's move on to color correction. Obviously we're working with the interior, so the temperature is going to be a little warmer than the usual exterior daylight. So let's bring it up a little bit, and the brightness as well. We'll need a lot more light in the interior, so I'm going to bring the brightness and the contrast down just a little bit. Saturation can stay as it is, so we are done in here for now. Moving on to reflections. Obviously we have a couple of reflective surfaces in here, so let's start with the obvious one, which are the windows in here. We have a little bit the window in here visible. We have more window in here, or glass. Now I'm going to select the floor as well, because it is slightly reflective. It is not very glossy, but it is just medium glossy, I would say. So we're going to select that because there will be a couple of reflections in there as well. And there is a glass, tempered glass on this fireplace as well. So we're going to choose or select that one, and then one more in here, as I know that the material that I use for this little table is glossy, so we can get some reflections in there as well. Need to turn on the speedway reflections, and we are done in here. Moving on to hyperlight. Since we are dealing with the interior, hyperlight is quite important, so I'm going to bring the values up somewhere around here. Now adjusting this effect, you will not be able to see any changes in your viewer, because the changes are only visible after you render. So specifically for this particular effect, you'll have to do a couple of test renders to be able to see the change or different result. but I know that I want it somewhere around there from experience. I'm going to bring the brightness of the skylight up as well, and the saturation just a little bit down in here. I'm not going to use the planar and projected reflections for now. Moving on to shadows. Now, once again, interior. So the coloring of the shadows will be in somewhere in here, which means it's going to be slightly warmer than normal, and the brightness obviously needs to go up. Now you can see that the corners are a little bit more visible since we have diffuse light in here, so the shadows will not be so profound or sharp. Omni shadows down just a little bit, and we're going to keep the soft shadows and fine detail shadows on as well. So we are done with the shadow effect. Moving on to chromatic aberrations, always bringing down just a little bit from the preset, because I think it's a little bit too strong for me. And the next one, depth of field. Now I want to be able to see the whole interior, obviously, all the elements, so I'm going to choose the distance, focusing distance somewhere in here at the edge of the counter. So I'm going to select that and turn on the autofocus, which will select the distance to that particular counter. And I'm going to bring the foreground and background slider almost all the way up, and the amount of blur somewhere in the middle. And as you can see straight away, basically from the coffee table all the way to the counter, everything is sharp and the background is out of focus. So our focus stays on the interior. So we are done in here. Now we're gonna come back to the exposure. I can see that the picture is still too dark, so I'm going to bring the exposure somewhere around here. And we're gonna go back to the volumetric sunlight, which I disabled before. I'm going to hold down the shift key, which will give me a better range or a better adjustment of this effect. So I want to move the range so it covers the other window as well, as you can see right now in here. And obviously we need to bring the brightness down, a lot down, basically just barely to be visible. There we are. I think that's spelled okay right now. We'll just double check if we need to come back to some of the effects. I wanted to come back to the skylight. We're going to turn on the planar and projected reflections. The render will take a little longer. We'll get nice diffuse light from the surfaces in the interior. So let's have a look at our final render. That's all for today, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.